Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. There's obviously a lot of meta discussion here on the channel. It's one of the main things that we focus on a day-to-day basis, but something that is absolutely true about Warzone right now is the fact that we have an absolute ton of pretty viable weapons. Like, we look back, we've had metas where the DMR and the M16 and the FFAR dominated everything, and there was no point in using some of those mid-tier guns. But we're at a point now in Warzone where the TTK has been raised enough, and it's now down to that slower point where you can get away with using a lot of different weapons, even though they're not the absolute #1 fastest killing thing in the game, and you're gonna be able to do well with them. And today I wanted to highlight what I think are some of the best underrated weapons, underutilized weapons that we currently have in Warzone. So as we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. It really does help out the channel and helps it grow. And of course, if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, feel free to click that sub button, tap that bell icon. That way you'll always know whenever I post a new video. You can always guarantee you're up to date with everything going on in Call of Duty. Also, right now, my discount code on G Fuel Immortal is actually 30% off. So if you want to get a new tub, a shaker cup, a starter pack, some cans, Code Immortal has got you covered on everything there. So first up, I want to talk about a weapon that it seems like has always been just behind the top tier meta weapons ever since it was added in, and that is the Ram 7. This was actually a Season 1 DLC weapon for Modern Warfare, and it's always been relatively decent here in Warzone. All throughout the Modern Warfare era, it was one of the better rifles up there with like the AMAX and the M4, and throughout the Cold War era so far, it's never really been a bad choice. Now obviously, it doesn't have the mobility advantages that a lot of the Cold War rifles have, but what it does have is a very, very impressive TTK. I mean, this thing is right there with some of the better weapons in the game across range. It can be used for some close range sniper support options, or it can be used as like that medium and long range weapon if you can get past that initial recoil and learn that pattern. Like, all around, the Ram 7 is actually a surprisingly good weapon that absolutely does not get enough attention. I would say primarily because it's not a Cold War weapon. It's not really pushed in any significant ways, but hey, if you're looking for an MW rifle that is fun and a little bit different, the Ram 7 is absolutely one of the better choices there. Where, of course, starting off with that monolithic suppressor keeps us off the radar and gives us some better range. We also go for the Ranger barrel here. This is going to be the longest, and in turn, it's going to give you the best velocity, control, and range possible. Pretty standard for an MW weapon. I also go ahead and throw in the Commando foregrip, help out with some recoil control there. You got to go for the 50-round mags on there as well. Get those cleanups easier, help out. It helps out in, you know, trio fights, quad fights, whatever the case may be. And lastly, we also go for the VLK 3x optic. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the T-pose reticle on that as well. And you got a very, very solid AR setup here that absolutely is one of the most underrated options in the game. Another weapon that is a flat-out beast when it comes to damage is the MW AUG, the SMG, not the TAC rifle from Cold War. The AUG is sort of a sleeper weapon. Now, it's definitely been a hot topic recently. I know Jay talked about this a little while back, showing off just how good it is when it comes to its overall TTK. The drawback here, and the reason that this really is not a true meta weapon, but is still a viable and competitive option, is the fact that it has pretty bad mobility. Like, it's a very slow SMG, and SMGs need to be fast, they need to be quick for those aggressive close range fights. Unfortunately, it doesn't have that going for it, but if you can play to its strengths here with that TTK and with the ADS speeds, it's a phenomenal gun. Like, it is an absolutely super fun weapon that is 100% slept on, extremely underrated. Again, it's not a Cold War weapon, so it's not really pushed in the right directions, but there's no denying the stats here. This thing can fry everything. It's insane how good the TTK is here. Specifically, if you go ahead and put on the NATO rounds, it's pretty much converting it to a rifle, but it still has the SMG properties, so it's still very good in my opinion. Definitely a beast. You can't really use the 30-round mags, though, because the fire rate here is just not good enough. It's going to end up hurting you more than it's helping you. So 60 rounds is sort of the go-to here. Of course, you got to be using the monolithic suppressor as well. Personally, I think the iron sights are okay, so you don't really have to worry about that. You could try and run a barrel, but really anything here is not going to be super ideal. It's all going to be hurting your ADS and your mobility in some capacity. The long barrel here and the extended barrel really, I don't feel like is all that worth it for close range fights. You want to cater to this weapon's strengths with the ADS and those close range capabilities. Lightweight even is sort of pushing it. You can maybe get away with that, but I don't feel like you fully need it. Instead, we're going to go for the Merc foregrip, get some better hip fire accuracy on there. I'm going to go for the TAC laser over the 5 milliwatt to sort of play to that ADS strength and make it a little bit snappier and quicker there. Then for the last attachment here, you can sort of mess around. The stipple grip tape, definitely a solid option. You could go for something like the CQB comb stock and get a better ADS out of that. Or if you really wanted to, you could go for something like sleight of hand even. Sort of comes down to what you want to play to there. But any of those options, honestly, super good. Now, there is one Cold War weapon on the list today, and that is going to be the EM2. This thing really does not get utilized much as a rifle, despite it being one of the most powerful weapons in the entire game. This thing has a phenomenal TTK across all ranges. It also has one of the best damage drop-off properties in the game. It really doesn't have any significant drop-offs compared to a lot of the other weapons that we have as meta weapons. The drawbacks here, and the reason that I think it's underrated, is because one, it's slow, it's heavy, it's not the most agile rifle in the world, and two, it does have a lot more kick and recoil than most other guns, so you actually have to work to use that, and that's something that a lot of Warzone players don't like to do. They don't like to work for kills, they just want the point and shoot guns, right? So for that reason, it's not a super popular pick, but if you're a good player, if you can go in and manage that recoil, this thing will just erase players because of how powerful it truly is. Now, being that it's a Cold War weapon, the setup here is pretty straightforward. We're going agency, we're going task force for the best range, control, and velocity. You definitely want to be using field agent because of that more noticeable recoil. I go ahead, I throw on the 3x optic, as always, pretty much just a broken record at this point, but I do use the deep sea reticle, part of the Dockside Killer bundle, because I see comments asking about that all the time. Then lastly, you got to go for that larger magazine. 40 or 50 is going to be the go-to here. 50 is going to be a little bit slower and bog you down a little bit more, so I feel like 40 is sufficient. The fire rate's not crazy, so you don't have to reload constantly, and it does the job just fine. Overall, an absolutely underrated rifle that will erase players, but it does take a bit more skill to use and to master. Now, next up, this is a weapon that's slowly getting more and more attention because people are figuring out, yeah, it's actually insane, the Fin LMG. For starters, I feel like the reason people aren't flocking towards this initially is because its mobility is abysmal. It's an LMG to begin with, so it's already not fast. It's already very heavy and slow in pretty much every single aspect. But the fact that it is so much slower than some of these other weapons, like the Cold War subs, for instance, the Stoner, the RPD, even things like that, the MG82, it's not helping its case there. Then you compare it to other meta weapons like the Cold War rifles or some of the other MW rifles even, it doesn't have a lot going for it in the mobility department, so you really got to do a lot to look past that. But really what you want to focus on is the potential TTK, which actually rivals the MG82 as the best in the game over range because of one thing in particular, the long shot adverse barrel. This just skyrockets the fire rate. It does hurt the control and movement and everything, but it gives you an insane fire rate and an absolutely incredible TTK. Like I said, that is one of the best in the game over range, so you gotta have that on there. We're also going for the monolithic suppressor. I go for the commando foregrip on there as well. You gotta have the tac laser to help out that ADS time a little bit because it is pretty rough as is. Then I go for the VOK 3x optic, yet again, pretty much the go-to MW optic. It is slow, but man, does it hit like a truck. And then lastly, we got a fan favorite, the Bruen. It used to be the GOAT weapon in Warzone. At one point, it was the #1 meta weapon. Obviously, since Cold War and everything has happened there, it's been nerfed a couple of times, and now it's a mid-tier weapon that really doesn't have any significant damage drop-offs. Its mobility for being an LMG is really, really good. Like, all around, it's just a super consistent weapon that I don't feel like gets used enough. It's still so fun to use and absolutely can hold its own in the competitive meta right now, in my opinion. Pretty basic setup here, monolithic suppressor, longest barrel, which is going to be the Summit in this case. You can either go for the commando foregrip or the tac laser. It's sort of one or the other here. If you can control the recoil, I feel like tac laser offers some more beneficial pros. So if you get that pattern down, you're good to go. The 60 round mag is really what makes this thing so special and so unique. Then of course you got to go for an optic. Either the blue dot hollow sight or the VOK 3x, in my opinion, are the go-tos. Again, a very, very fun weapon to use. That's the thing with all these underrated weapons is they're not just point and shoot. You got to master them, and that I feel like makes them a lot more fun and rewarding to use. And honestly, they're all still fantastic choices, even though they're not the #1 weapon in the entire game or the top 5 best weapons. Absolutely no questions asked, right? All these can hold their own, and that's what makes them worth talking about, and they're absolutely not used enough. So hopefully you got a good sense of what you could use that's sort of off meta that's still going to be good enough to actually drop some kills with and compete with. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. It really does help me out. And of course, if you're new here or if you haven't already subscribed, feel free to click that sub button. That way you can always guarantee you're always up to date with everything going on in COD, news, intel, updates, loadouts, tips. We're always covering it all right here every single day. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.